Hello, the old bandicoots are back. We're taking a slight detour in this particular episode, which is the problem that every single brand, big or small, is worried about budgets. Branding requires a budget. Staying in the customer's mind is not a cheap exercise. It can't be done by wishful thinking. And for everyone who pipes up and says, but Google created a brand without advertising and Facebook created a brand without advertising. Google and Facebook spend billions of dollars every year on their own set or portfolio products, which is where Naran and I are going to talk about in this episode. How do you begin that process? What is that initial bit to ensure that you catch the customer's attention? Where does it begin?
To really even talk about branding, you needed as a client to have enough budgets, because otherwise every amateur who's done a college course can talk about branding.
Yeah.
You really need money behind you to be able to put that branding ideas into practice. Otherwise, you're probably a lecturer somewhere, you're a curator of ideas, you're probably conducting workshops here and there, and nothing wrong with that, but you definitely won't be a practitioner. In the real world practice of brands and brand building, no budget practically means don't even get into this brand thing. Then just do an honest job of selling and depend on some word of mouth and stay limited, stay humble, sell in your little city and the environments and in those environments, and then probably move to the next town and geographically limit yourself. That was the extent of your ambition, and with time, with luck, and with growth, you could then look for a whole state to master, and with further growth and further luck, you could then look for neighboring states, and one day, years later, you could become an all India brand. Otherwise, to start out with and in the first few years talking about branding and this and that is of no real consequence. That used to be the conventional wisdom then, and mostly that has held true. For example, why did it need that kind of money at all for branding then? In a very simple way, because a brand didn't exist unless many people knew about it in the first place. Basic awareness. If I don't even know that you exist as a brand, where is the question of me even going out and buying that stuff in great numbers? Therefore, to make me just aware of the brand, you needed to be on television, on national television, you needed to take out print ads, you needed to be on hoardings in major cities, and so on. Now, that took the budget. It's not just about the idea. Even if you had a very simple or even a mediocre or even a bad idea, you still needed a lot of money to reach a lot of people. That seems to be coming down now for various reasons. One of the major reasons is the obvious expansion of this social media as a hugely democratic force in many ways. I mean, like all of us at a social level are now free to sort of vent and give our opinions out on a platform which other people read. And so it's not just that I used to vent with my couple of friends who were indulgent, and we went to
Yeah.
the local tea shop at the corner of my road and we vented and came back. But now I know 100 strangers who could be anywhere in the world technically, and I could vent with them on Facebook or on LinkedIn or wherever it is of my chosen platform. Suddenly, two friends have become 100, and at some point, I'll be having 500 people and thousands of people and all that kind of stuff. In a similar sense, that is, of course, the social part of democratization of our opinions. In a similar sense, for manufacturers with commercial interests, with products or services to sell, suddenly the same media has democratized their own entry into the market. Previously, the big barrier was that if you didn't have enough budget to enter the mass media of India, don't even bother coming in. Now, people are saying, no, what's the problem? I'll do something on Instagram, see how it goes. I'll get a guy on Fiverr to do some introductory visuals for me on Facebook. Maybe I'll get somebody to write a blog or something like that for me, a post or two on LinkedIn. And suddenly I'm getting maybe not millions, but I'm getting quite a good crowd. And if I have a decent product, I have the opportunity. So therefore, if I price it well, if I like the real challenges of marketing have always been the same. How do I price it? How much of quality do I offer for that price? Who are my audience and what is the pain point I'm trying to solve? It is just that the media cost was so high that it was a real barrier for most people, even with great ideas, to be able to enter a market. And therefore, the market was owned by people with the money. Now, even if a Unilever wants to do their Facebook ads, they really can't buy up the whole of internet or something like that. It's not possible. So therefore, there is no question of anybody dominating one media like people used to. Like people used to, the big ones used to take the commercial slots. Immediately, that came after the program break, for example, or that immediately came just in front of a program resumption. And therefore, money ruled the way that a brand or greatly influenced the success of a product because it greatly increased its exposure. Right now, that doesn't seem to be the case for brands like shoes by Neiman's, which is not something I've not seen a shop, I've not visited the factory.
Right.
I think they are from Delhi somewhere. I'm not even very sure. I don't know who they are. I've certainly not seen any celebrities sort of saying that please buy these shoes. I wear them myself. I've not seen anything. All I saw was some ads on Facebook. So that is the second aspect. First aspect is money is no longer such a big issue from the manufacturer's side. Secondly, consumers have also become a little more comfortable with risk, as in other aspects of life. How much of a mistake is it going to be if I buy the wrong shoes? I mean, so therefore people are saying, and what do I expect from a shoe? How much of a benefit do I need of a unique benefit in a shoe? That, I mean, what is a shoe going to do besides being around on my feet, and as long as the fit is okay and the material is fine, what more do I want from a shoe? So how much of a risk is it anyway to be able to buy an unknown pair of shoes from a social media thing? And now that I've been buying that for the last 3 years, this is my third pair or something like that. It's because the shoes were damn good and I'm quite satisfied with them. I can think of certain kind of categories, cosmetics for women, which are all very new, and people are saying, yeah, I like what they seem to be doing on Instagram. I seem to like what they're doing on Facebook. That is the way it seems to be going, in my opinion. What is your take on this?
It's interesting that you're drawing parallels between how sales used to be generated and distribution. One of the other things that's happened is that the internet has made distribution very easy for a whole set of brands which didn't need to go through physical channels to exist. So they could take up a warehouse in one particular place and then ensure that shoes are shipped across to whichever location where the orders seem to be coming from. And because you can figure out exactly where most of your orders seem to be coming from, it becomes easier to plan your process and then figure out if that's the place where it needs to go. I think at some point, what we're talking about is longevity, because brands are intricately linked. The reputation of a brand is not just the sale. So you could have a lot of brands which sell very well for a number of years, but they have got practically next to no connection to the customer beyond a certain point. So how does a brand then rise above that is the question. I'll give you another example because this is a real life example. There was this person from Bombay who got in touch and then said, will you take over my son's Instagram page through which he was selling smartphone covers? Because he said that this guy had an Instagram page. He would put up designs for various smartphones, and because he was connected to his community of friends and they knew exactly which was the popular phones, he used to get these blanks from China, print them over with the designs, and he knew what kind of designs they all like, and he was selling as many as 200, 300 covers a day, which is really good. But the problem is, the moment he left, that is, he decided that he wanted to pursue studies further, because at some point this got boring and then he went out and started studying abroad. The father was stuck because he couldn't replicate this. He couldn't build on whatever his son had already done, because it's almost like preparing a meal without a fridge. You have to eat whatever is consumed, and that is the extent of the, how far it'll go. So there is a real problem in understanding the difference between a product that sells well and what is involved, and building the brand, which is a different ball game altogether. And at some point, it takes brands a certain amount of time and they have to hit a certain wall. I think you've noticed this, that there are brands which will coast until they are 40, 50 crores. They say that I will use a mixture of freelancers, and then they get somebody who comes in, does a bit of work, it comes out, they get people to schedule the ads, and then they do this thing of trying to manage the brand entirely through a set of multiple capabilities or skills that they're looking at. But then they reach a point where it goes only so far and no further, because all the money that has been spent is not adding up to a certain kind of brand image which will resonate with the customer. And that, I think, is the point at which they understand, oh, it doesn't really translate into something which is much bigger over time. And that is one of the things that I've been telling customers who come in, that your brand can't be just at a functional level. There has to be something in it which takes it to the next level. And that is the hard bit. It's not the easy bit. The part which requires money, the part which requires all the investment in time, ideas, experimentation is almost like it's a form of research. And the way I do it is I tend to say this, which I've said on LinkedIn as well, that I'm an interpreter. And an interpreter not of languages, but of consumer connections. What is it that people respond to? Because you have to find that language. You have to find out what the customer will of that particular product will respond to and respect. It's not just the experience of the brand alone. There's something more to it. You mentioned earlier in an earlier episode that McDonald's, for example, has never used celebrities. But McDonald's has always been about families, and I'm loving it. And the idea of the food as something that is an experience that's quick, available wherever you are. And it's an experience that is predictable and something that people like. So your costs of doing the regular advertising itself just keep going up year after year. And there's a point at which it doesn't make sense to be selling that product anymore. I think those are the problems that these brands are contending with. If you had one bad experience with Neiman's and you were not happy with the product, you would have absolutely no problem switching to some other brand. And Neiman's has lost you permanently. So they can't afford to keep doing that. So if you have a certain amount of churn within your base, then that churn is something that small brands cannot handle. Before Apple Watch came into being, there was something called the Pebble, which was a Kickstarter brand. They actually got to the point where they sold 230 million in watches, in smartwatches, but it was based on the e-ink technology. But the hassle was that Apple could outlast them for about 4 generations or 10 generations selling smartwatches, whereas if Pebble made the wrong set of models for one particular season, they were done for because the inventory was so high they didn't have money to invest for the next cycle. So these are the parts I think which branding is again going to be supremely responsible for building over time. But there are products who say, okay, I'm looking for longevity. If you're looking for longevity, you need to build a brand.
What you're bringing up is, if a product is around today and there seems to be a more willing market, a more democratic market, a more forgiving market out there, how do I still go about building a brand? Because that is what is going to save me in the long term. It's a very valid question. So do you really have a brand, or are you just peddling a product? It comes to that. And does it also mean that a brand is only meant for the rich manufacturers and products are meant for the other unlucky, small and medium enterprises, which is not correct. For example, to come back to the Neiman's instance itself, one of the most attractive things for me at that time was the fact that their shoes were made from recycled PET bottles. I know what PET bottles are. I think every Bisleri bottle is one. And I know what shoes are. But I never thought the two could come together in any sense at all. Therefore, there is this thing of, there is a direct consumer benefit there, because in my mind, I could be the person who was wearing shoes that somehow was environmentally friendly. I am wearing recyclable shoes. That makes me feel better about myself. I thought this is such a fantastic thing and I must do whatever I can. That is a brand, in my opinion. At the end of the day, a brand is something that gives you a certain benefit consistently. I stand for this and I want you to know that. So my
Yeah.
feature is PET bottles. The benefit is you feel very environmentally responsible and empathetic, and that you care. That is the benefit. Whereas if I was just saying comfortable shoes, they come in very many colors and that's about it, then shoes are shoes or shoes. And if it had remained that, I'm not sure whether I would have bought the second pair and the third pair. Therefore, a brand is a brand in my mind, at least. It's something where somebody says, I will purchase it again. If you bought Lux only once, it doesn't make it a brand in your mind. It becomes a real brand for you. But when you keep returning to some familiar shampoo or familiar toothpaste or some familiar, then that in your mind is a brand. If sufficient thousands and millions of people feel like that, then it is a brand. And with today's democratization of social media for manufacturers, I'm saying maybe to localized, well-targeted audiences, you have a great chance of making a brand.
Yeah.
Previously, if you did not have money, you probably could not have a great brand. You still need a bit of budget to be able to get some performance marketing from Google going, some expenditure on Facebook, which is what lesser clients even before used to say. Every time I spend, I sell. Every time I stop spending, I stop selling. Now that that is not a brand then, or it is not a brand yet. Maybe it needs few more injections, but at some
Yeah.
point you need to have lesser and lesser injections so that that thing is able to stand on its own, because it has taken root in enough people's minds. So when time comes for repurchase, they are thinking, hey, I should go to that person or that brand again. The thing is, these principles are available to today's manufacturers, to today's SMEs, to today's small businesses, as much as these same principles were available to the big guys then. Even those principles have become democratized, so that those same good branding principles, which includes brand identity, which includes at its very basic consistent looks and a look and feel, the correct typefaces, the correct colors, the correct way of talking, a consistency in using certain kind of graphics. There's a way of writing headlines and baselines, a way of showing certain kind of people and not certain other kind of people, and so on. All those brand identity kind of things, which were really fully available for those big Unilevers and Procter and Gambles, all those techniques are available to everybody today. That is the point I was
Yes.
trying to.
Difference now is that the advantage that the Unilevers and the other big brands have is that they've been practicing this for decades. Anyone who is coming to it now will have to learn that. And you can learn it purely by understanding principles. You have to become practitioners and you have to find guides who will be able to tell you how to take that forward. I think, as far as Narayan and I are concerned, we are available for groups of small companies that want to look at a certain sector, or a brand that wants to take off at a certain point and is stuck. You've reached 50 crores, you've reached 100 crores, and how do you take it to the next level? You've reached a point where the freelancers and the basic ways of advertising in Facebook and all of that are not yielding the results that they were yielding even 4 or 5 years ago. You're stuck. We know several brands which have been stuck, and we've helped them come unstuck.
I suppose there are a lot of people who have sufficient experience in branding principles that will be of great help to, and it's available. It is a good time to be an SME. So, therefore, at the end of 2 years, you want to look back and say, oh, I have created a brand.
Great. On that note, we'll let you go and we'll be back again with another episode. Thank you as always. Bye bye.
Right.